Now we're going to be talking about the rack units. This is where we're going to be assigning all of our onboard effects as well as our graphic EQs. Let's head over to the console. Again, not to sound repetitive, but there's a couple of ways to be able to access that screen. The quick way that I like to use, just by using the screen access buttons, by pressing this once, this will bring up the effects racks onto the screen. If I press it again, it'll switch it over to the graphic EQ. All right, so if we're in the console overview and we want to go ahead and use the mouse, we can select on the home tab, scroll down to the rack units. Now, as you see, we have an effect sheet where we can name everything, all of the graphic EQs and all of the rack, the internal effects. If we want to go directly to the graphic EQ tab, we can go ahead by selecting this or the effects. But let's just pop into the effect sheet real quick to take a look at it. As you see now, very similar to the inputs, naming the channels and coloring everything. I'm not going to go ahead and jump into that right now because I'll show you why you don't exactly have to do that. But so now let's jump in. First off, let's go into the graphic EQs. Right now, we see graphic EQs 1 through 8. Why? Because that's the configuration of how we have the console set up. So that's why we only have 8 effects here. Okay, so right now, everything is default name, graphic EQ 1 through 8. So right now, I have my left and right linked. Again, I'll be going over that video on how to link a channel at a later time. So for now, we're gonna open this up. So we have our first graphic EQ. So I like to have graphic EQ 1 and 2 to be assigned to my left and right, okay? So the first thing I'm gonna do here is select the drop down, and it's gonna give us all of the variable locations that we can go ahead and put a graphic EQ on. So for aux sends, like this would be perfect for, doing monitors, okay? So we got 1 through 72, and then we got all the matrices. So if you're using the matrix outs for, like front fills, stereo delays, or whatever outputs that you might be needing, if you wanna go ahead and chuck a graphic EQ on there, it's very easy to go ahead and patch that in. So for me, like I said, 1 and 2 we're gonna use for the left and right. So now I'm gonna go ahead and select left. And now you're gonna notice the name just associated to say, hey, I'm patched into the left. The color, because I didn't change the default color from green to red, like I said I like to use. So it's already set up there. So if we close out of this, this is what I wanna show you why the channels were linked. Since the left and right are linked, and we have the EQ tab of the linking assigned to it, it's gonna say, hey, we're gonna link the EQs to the left and right to be together. All right, so if I make a change to the right or the left, it's all gonna be the same. All right, again, this is not a mixing course. You have your basic graphic EQ controls, all right? If you wanna go ahead and start, controlling the EQ from the screen, you can go ahead and do that. You can highlight, and now you have your assignable controls on here to control any of the parameters of the graphic EQ. And that'd be a strange EQ, but anyways, you get the idea. Another great way to be able to control the graphic EQ is if we have the graphic EQ button engaged on the console, and I went over here and selected the left and right. As you see, the VCAs now have turned into all of the controls for the graphic EQ. So as you see, I can make changes to the graphic EQ really, really fast. If I need to get to the higher or lower frequencies, the outside VCA buttons are arrows to bank around and get to different areas that you need. Okay, but back to the screen here. So we can use the assignable control arrow to the left and the right to move between the different regions of the graphic EQs to grab the assignable controls. And if we keep going all the way over here to the right, this is gonna bring us into the high pass and the low pass filters, okay? So you would have to go ahead and engage those, all right, just like that. Same thing with the graphic EQ. There's an EQ in button. You can go ahead and do it here on the master if you're using the left and right. So you see if I press this, it's actually engaging it there. So Make sure it will catch you, like when you start adding all the other graphic EQs, make sure you go ahead and engage that, so that way it doesn't trick you up and you think that you have the graphic EQ there and you start making changes and you're saying, well, I'm not really hearing a difference. That's gonna grab you. So make sure you have that button engaged. Now below that, we have two other EQs to basically like notch filters, so that way we can hone in on a specific frequency and kind of notch that out a bit. Again, we have the engage buttons for that. With the assignable controls, you know, we have the soft keys here that will go ahead and make the changes, as well as making the adjustments to the graphic EQ. Very straightforward and to the point. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into the effects. We're going to be doing separate videos for that, so I'm going to be going in depth on the specific types of effects. But just for a simple, you know, overview of how this works. Okay, you see here to the left, we got 1, 2, and 3. The third one is missing the last two because the console is set up with 22 effects. So if it's not there, if it's not set up, it's not going to be there. Okay, so let's go back to the first slot. So to assign an effect, you just click on the blank tab. You go over here to change device type. You're going to be displayed with a whole bunch of different options: modulation, distortion, exciter, delay, reverb, dynamic, EQ, and other. As you see, we have various different options of reverbs. Personally, I love the old school DN780. So for that, I'm just going to grab that. Boom. It looks familiar, right? A lot of you guys have probably used the hardware unit, and it's exactly the same here in the digital world. Okay, so as you see now, the effect is kind of highlighted, all right, to let you know that these parameters are available. Again, like the graphic EQ, these assignable controls now are going to be able to control parameters on the actual effect unit. So same thing with the buttons. You can put the mute in, the reverse, you can audition it, the program, everything is right there in front of you. So whenever you have this screen up, if you take a notice here, this says page 1 of 2. So if you want to go ahead and get to the second page, you just arrow to the right. It's going to bring you down to the next parameters that you're able to control with the encoder knobs and the buttons down here. All right, very simple. So we can go back to it. If we want to now go to the second effects slot, we can just hit the down arrow, and now we're there, and we can go in and put the devices that we want to have in the rack. That symbol. We want to go back up, it's a simple arrow. Okay, now because we have effect 1 already patched in on the rack, okay, and if you remember in the console overview, you have this effect button, so where we can have that engaged. So let me go back to a home screen. So if I go ahead and select on any aux or even a channel that might have one of the effects patched in on the insert, the minute I select that channel, it brings the effect up on the screen. Once again, the assignable controls are going to control everything that we need. Great option to have. I can't tell you how many times, like I'm in mixing and stuff, I might be in a very reverberant room, and it's like, okay, that, you know, that vocal reverb that I have, you know, for the vocal might be a little bit too big for this room. So I can quickly just get to that, you know, effect by pressing that button, and the effect is right there on the screen, and I can make my change right then and there, unselect the channel, and I'm back to like mixing. All right, that simple. So using the effects and the graphic EQ buttons on the console, really awesome feature to have. And that's it.